Distinguished members of the panel, researchers and authors, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me pleasure to welcome you to this track number 5, Ethics and the Dark Side. We have a very exciting lineup of papers for you today. 5 papers, 4 from India, 1 from Kenya. I should also like to share with you that this is the first time within the 10-year history of ICEGOV that we have a track with this title. We've actually combined 2 tracks, and again, this is reflective of new developments within the field that we're working on. And as you know, one of the important roles that the ICEGOV community plays is in signaling emerging issues. And issues related to ethics and the dark side are tremendously important. Yesterday, and also throughout our careers, I'm sure we've heard quite a lot about the potential that ICTs offer to societies. New opportunities for prosperity, for well-being, and of course, ICTs can play a key role in helping us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. At the same time, however, there's also a need for caution. Innovations, whatever their type, can often create disruptions in society, disruptions in business. We're also dealing with technologies which are very much global. Global, it combines the idea of global and also local. With social media, a tweet, a comment, a post, which is perhaps very innocuous, very innocent in one context, when received by another participant, may have very, very perturbing impacts and effects. So on one hand, yes, enhancing societal well-being is essential. At the same time, we have to reflect. We have to consider what are the social, ethical, and legal implications of these new innovations, these new opportunities that we have. We also have to ask ourselves questions. Who perhaps are being excluded? What are the new forms of insecurity which are potentially being created? What are the new areas of harm? And we have to balance. Again, as I said, I talked about the issue of global. Different societies, different groups, different age groups. What content is age appropriate within a particular context? What is appropriate? And so during this discussion, we will talk about 5 papers, but we also, with a view towards meeting the goal of ICEGOV, that is of informing policy discussion, policy debate, we'd also like to take this opportunity to identify new emerging issues which perhaps could inform the reflections in future ICEGOV conferences and could also inspire researchers to explore new areas. Again, ICEGOV is also a community which brings together people from industry, from government. So hopefully this discussion can also trigger reflections by industry, the private sector, in terms of what potential safeguards, measures are needed, and likewise for policymakers, what new policies are there. Now to help me and to help all of us have this exchange, we're assisted by 2 very distinguished panelists. Mr. Amrit Kumar, he is a graduate of the Indian Institute of Technology and a cyber law enforcement expert at the Indian Central Bureau for Investigation. His area of specialization is in combating corruption and financial fraud. And then on my extreme left, I have Mr. Pavan Dugal, another international expert. His focus is in the area of cyber law, cybersecurity, and e-commerce. He has published extensively in these fields and is also the organizer of an international conference held annually here in India which addresses these topics. Now, I'd also like to recognize, of course, the participation of the team who will be helping us with the logistics, and of course, to the ICEGOV community, to the organizers. You know, of course, this would not have been possible without the tremendous commitment and support of the government of India and all the many ministries, state corporations, etc., who have helped in this area. So as I said, we have 5 papers that we'll be looking at. I'm sorry, I've just been informed. There's one researcher who was not able to make it. So we'll be looking at 4 papers which we'll be introducing. I'd like us, as I said, I'd like this session to be interactive. So I'll be giving an opportunity to each of the panelists to say a little bit about each of the papers that will be presented here today. In terms of housekeeping, we have about 15 minutes allocated for each author, researcher to make their presentation. Following this, we will first have a few comments interjected by a member of the panel or members of the panel, and then we will, of course, open this up to discussion. Again, as I said, I would like us possibly to also think and consider issues outside the context of the 4 papers, as this will be a very useful input to the deliberations and preparations for the next ICEGOV session. So without any further ado, at this point I'd like to introduce, I pass the mic to Mr. Amrit Kumar, who will introduce the first paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The first paper we have today is about data analytics in combating financial frauds. As has been my experience as a practitioner, the financial frauds are increasing and the role of technology in them is also increasing day by day. We have frauds where technology is creating such a maze of companies that it is humanly impossible to go to the depth of the fraud, and we are finding it difficult day in and day out to reach up to the final level of beneficiary. There is where the big data analytics come in. If the companies can use technology, if the offenders can use technology to perpetrate the fraud, we can very well leverage technology to detect the fraud. There have been good success stories also where we have used big data analytics to detect frauds. There have been cases where this has led to a very successful detection, and finally even these cases are running in court. So with that background, I'll invite that's Rishabh Srivastav and Sheena Panikar for presenting their paper.
A very good morning, esteemed panelists, and to the eminent scholars present here. As Mr. Amit sir has pointed out, it's a very emerging topic and it needs discussion so that we can build more effective solutions to combat the financial frauds that are now occurring in a manner which is uncontrollable until unless the government actually puts a hold on them. It's going to be out of our hands very soon, because the level of frauds have come to thousands of crores now. So I'm beginning my topic. The topic is emerging role of data analytics in combating financial frauds, the era of big data in India. Now the financial fraud itself is an amalgamation of a lot of frauds, and it's very difficult to put them all together in a single paper. So I have, in my paper, talked about corporate frauds, which is a major part of a financial fraud. The scenario in India for financial frauds is that India now has emerged on the world front as the fastest growing big economy. The government is promoting digitization with initiatives like National E-Governance Plan, Digital India Program, and laptops are being distributed to school children. Now, the computers have reached the masses. People are now beginning to understand that how computers can be used to organize and store their data. Now, a lot of good has happened with this promotion. And with this, the fraudsters are also now leveraging technology, and they cannot go without it. Even a small firm opened in a one room space has one desktop computer at least and a person sitting behind it to store the data, to collect money, and So we need solutions to handle such cases where these people are actually duping the innocent Indian investors of their hard-earned money. Devious fraudsters are now leveraging technology and using sophisticated means for duping investors. And now it takes, if you have a template ready, it would take only 5 minutes to print a certificate. A 10th or a 12th grade pass out, or maybe an illiterate farmer would not realize that he's putting money into a company, and he would be mesmerized seeing a certificate which says that he has deposited some money. But at the back end, maybe that company does not exist anywhere. Indian government has now taken cognizance of the rise of reported cases of financial frauds in India. There are 167 cases of such frauds reported in two serious fraud investigation office, where the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has ordered the investigations. Before 2013, the Companies Act was 1956. There were amendments to it, but by taking the cognizance of these corporate frauds, the Indian government passed Companies Act 2013 with, and the first time there was a definition of fraud included in the act. Before that, the fraudsters were leveraging these small loopholes within the acts and taking advantage. Now, the definition of fraud is, fraud includes any act, omission, concealment of any fact, or abuse of position committed by any person with intent to deceive, gain undue advantage from, or to injure the interests of company or its shareholders or its creditors or any other person, whether or not there are any wrongful gains or wrongful loss. Because sometimes the company says that we have not gained anything. Wherever we put our money, we had losses. So even in those cases, we are putting them as frauds where there are no business means. They collect money and maybe they put them into land. Maybe they say after 10 years you would get a piece of land, but that same piece of land they offer to 10 different people, and they don't know that all of them are going to get that same piece of land. After 10 years, maybe the company would declare itself bankrupt and just vanish. Definition by ASSOCHAM India says, financial fraud is defined as the falsification of financial information with intent to mislead investors by fudging the books of accounts. It includes concealment of liabilities, improper asset evaluation, fictitious revenues, and improper disclosures. Now, the research direction that I have put in my paper is about the Ponzi scams by companies which are reported in the last few financial years. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs have reportedly ordered investigations to the affairs of 145 companies involved in illegal deposit-making activities over the last 4 years. These are generally Ponzi schemes. Now, Ponzi schemes are characterized by deposit taking without a means to develop the industry in which they are supposedly saying that they are investing into land, but actually there is no business. They are collecting money from people and they are buying plots of lands, but they are not doing any business and duping the innocent investors. Sometimes they say they would get a gold, or they would promise unrealistic rates of returns. For example, if a farmer pays 200 rupees a month, he would be given promised double the money in 2 years or 3 years, and such people would fall into these traps. Rose Valley Group of companies was based out of West Bengal, and it is said to have duped investors to the tune of 10,281 crores. And the people who have invested the money in these companies, they are not educated, mostly not educated people. They are the people who are earning money from their very hard work. Laboriously, they are farmers paying 200, 300 rupees monthly out of their savings. So to earn an interest which at the end of the day they are not getting. Some of the other Ponzi scams that have been reported widely in the media are Sharda Ponzi scams, where there were a lot of group companies and the money was being circulated to each one of the company, and there was no other business. There were agents who would bring other agents under them, and there was a commission given to these agents in bringing those people. There was no other business. So they were also encouraged to bring other people into this agent's business, and there was a hierarchy. The person above, the topmost person was the company, which was getting all the money which was collected from. There was an agent registration fees, so all these agents would pay that fees, and that would also go to the company. And each agent that joins would bring in more agents, and those. The money collected by the agents with the schemes like fixed deposits, recurring deposits, these companies were not banks, but still they were taking money from the farmers, from the innocent people, and this money was also being directed to the company. ICEGOV group raised 7,000 crores with Ponzi schemes. This was also based out of West Bengal, and the modus operandi was money through advance booking of plots. Now they were printing debentures, preferential shares, and actually they were not even registered for doing such kind of a business. Cases assigned to SFIO. This is a list which has been provided in the Lok Sabha reply by SFIO to the Parliament. So it says a total of 167 cases, with 82 cases from West Bengal and 66 from Delhi. Now, what can be the different data sources? Now, the government is collecting data from different sources. Actually, till a few years back, how the investigation went on was there was physical papers. There would be a seize, and the papers would be collected, and the certificates, whatever they can find in the on the premises, were collected. But because data was not usually kept in the computers, or there were only 1 or 2 computers in a company, and that too the servers, the high-end servers, were only seen in bigger companies which were running smoothly. These kind of schemes, they are run generally from a small scale, and then they develop into a large scale fraud. So now we are having, since the last few years, we are finding data sources like transactional databases, Excel, Word files on the computers, then emails, servers data, then there are tally files in the computers. These kind of data are available within the company premises, which are being seized over. Now, the other data sources include maybe the company e-filing forms, which are collected by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs by each and every registered company across India. And there are bank transaction statements, which are very important. Each and every company, be it a small company or a company like Sharda, they cannot work with their 1,000 crores in cash. They have to move some money across banks. So the information that we get from the banks, the transaction statements of the directors of those companies, they can be a huge asset when we are investigating a case. Now, the evidences that can be forensically extracted out of these sources of data are from transactional databases. These are actually the sources which are present in the company premises generally. There is generally a transactional database. There are Excel and Word files, loose files, which are present on the desktop computers of maybe directors or maybe the IT person of the company. Then there is there may be email server data. There can be a Outlook, where Microsoft Outlook files which are stored in a person's computer, that can be analyzed. Then there are, in certain cases, tally data with their P&L and balance sheets stored on the server. So these kind of evidences, initially the government of India actually struggled with how to extract this kind of a data without losing its evidential value. Now we have a lot of private companies like KPMG and other such companies which are collaborating with government, collecting evidences in forensically sound ways. We are, now the government itself is using its resources to develop the expertise in building such kind of trained people who can use these kind of hardwares. The hardware duplicators like TD2, Solo4, these kind of duplicators can be used to keep the forensic value, the evidential value, the hash value of these files which are being copied from the premises. Then there are certain softwares like NCase, NUX, FTK. These are widely used and they are very effective in analyzing email data, or emails can be searched by keywords, the attachments can be grouped. There are a lot of facilities with these softwares. Now, I'll go on with each and every data source that I had discussed initially. The first one is a relational database. Now, it contains very vital information because these kind of databases are being maintained in SQL database server or Oracle database server. Now, there are they are very organized. These companies are now getting organized. They are doing crimes in an organized way. There are certain master tables where they are storing the details of agents, the applicants, their addresses, phone numbers, everything is present. And then which schemes are they floating, what are the interests they are promising, what kind of transactions they are doing, everything comes in their databases. Now, apart from master tables, there are transaction tables which generally give the details of deposits, when and how much has been deposited by each and every person. We can calculate the total amount that has been taken till date, and we can create tables that can financial year-wise aggregate the sums of deposits being taken. Now, if you do not take digital data into consideration, it would take a lot of time for the government to physically take each and every paper from the people affected, and then the picture that would emerge would not be as accurate as what can be got from the digital means. Now, the maturity and interest rates promises can also be seen. For example, there are tables which say that maturity is in 2 years and the interest rate is 50% of what you have deposited. They are unrealistic claims, and the government can take hold of such data. Then the commission structure is a vital information that we can get. In commission structure, you would see there is a tree-like structure with agents, one agent getting 10 agents, and then those 10 agents again getting 100 agents below them, and getting a fees for including these agents. This kind of a business is inappropriate. Now, these tables are queried. These tables are queried for with using the standard programming languages to generate summary reports. Now, we are considering this data source separately right now, and not considering the big picture here that I would discuss later. The second data source are the financial forms, for example, that are collected by the MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, like Form 23 ACA. Now they have converted into Form 23 AOC. And actually the ministry is also worked on the back end of it and upgraded their systems to SAP. Now, these kind of files have the information declared by the companies. These can be actually compared with the tally files which are there on the computers which are seized from the premises. And then we can see if there are any miscalculations or misrepresentation of facts. Then the fourth data source is the bank transaction data, which are collected from different banks. Now, these banks have a heterogeneous format. Sometimes they have a logo, they have the way they represent data. For example, credit or debit, they represented it by plus or minus. They may be different fields for credit or debit, or maybe they are combined together in one field. So such kind of a data we generally gather from different banks, and it becomes a problem consolidating the data so that we can have a homogeneous structure on which we can later run queries. So this kind of a problem is now being solved with customized softwares. For example, ACL, it's an accounting software that is being used. It's a very helpful tool in creating a homogeneous structure. Now, this data source is being treated separately than the database, the transactional database, which is a different data source. It's being treated separately. We are not taking, we are not looking at the big picture here. Until unless we bring out all these data, collect them together, and see the links between them, it gets very difficult to proceed with the investigation. Now, here we can see there is a transfer cash transfer of 4,000 rupees to Y from the account X. So we have to collect the information that between X and Y there is a cash transaction of 4,000 rupees. So I'll discuss the algorithm later. I worked on it. This, for example, here is a bank statement. It says from B to D there is a debit of 50,000, and from the bank statement of D, which is maybe from a different bank, it says there is a transfer from B. So we have to combine these figures so that we can say how much of actual money has been transferred between B and D. B and D may be group companies of the same big company. So these amounts can be put together. Now it would be 1.1 lakhs, and I have normalized this figure to 1.1. So based on the second table down, I have created a graph which says that E to C, the transaction, it shows that it's a very heavy transaction between these two nodes. And then there are loops which says some money has started from E and has come back to E again. If there are no transactions by cash, if there are checks or other means, then we can track such transactions. Then email data is another source where we can track important emails by keywords. So such kind of a facility is there in the forensic softwares like Nuix, FTK, etc. Then there are desktop files, MS Word, Excel files. These are actually opened one by one, seen for important files, and then grouped together. Now, how do we actually move to see the big picture? We need to the need for big data solutions for detecting corporate frauds in India. Now, till a decade back, there was a lack of awareness how the data can be captured, how we can keep the integrity of such data if we need to take it out for as evidence, and how to present in the court of law. Now, technology was not that much into the masses. It had not found its way to the grassroots, and it was still considered a luxury. Digital evidence was very manageable in size. It would come in a single hard disk maybe. Now we have embraced digitization with open arms. The advancement in technology is noticed particularly in the last decade. The size and means of data stored has come to many terabytes now. So data analytics has become the need of the hour. Now, the data collected at source, the 6 sources of data that I had listed are at the bottom. And then we are processing the data separately. Database is being queried for results. Bank transactions, we are transforming heterogeneous data, cleansing the data, and we are putting them into a homogeneous structure. Similarly, e-filing forms are scrutinized separately. Tally files are separately scrutinized. Emails, search for keywords. Word, Excel files are manually scrutinized. Then we are comparing and linking the evidences. Databases are compared with bank data for deposits or check numbers if they are actually they are feeding right into the database so that they can be proved in the court. So these linkages, and then we are summarizing the technical report. Now the second and third stage can be combined into a data analytics solution, which is a necessity of today. Now case proceedings last many years. There are occasional reprobes that come for the data. There are many cases. Okay. Many cases are investigated in parallel. So, and the properties of such data are they are huge. They are having a huge volume. They are actually a very heterogeneous format. The velocity with which the data comes is a lot. So, all these properties are actually indicating to a big data solution. Now, we actually need to make case repositories, case A repository, B repository. Such n cases should have a repository, and so that when the reprobes come, we can actually not waste time and get the data, required data from a big data platform. Now the road ahead is that we need more trained manpower in government sector so that the private agencies' involvement in the investigations can be reduced, and we can gain expertise with the help of them and then take it on our own. We need to collaborate with industry experts for developing a big data solution to aid speedy and accurate investigation. The different departments of the government should be able to work in a flexible manner and there must be clear guidelines how we can share data and details while investigating a case. Now, another major idea here is that we are actually moving from proactive role to we should move to a proactive role rather than a reactive role. So that is, we should move towards fraud prediction rather from fraud detection. Before a fraud happens, we should be able to see that a company is going in the wrong direction, and before a lot of people get affected, we should catch hold of them. That is the idea of the paper. Thank you.
Any questions? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, very seminal topic, and of course, big data and data analytics offer a strategy for dealing with the large volumes and a transforming economy and society. But the point about big data being, I gather the point made was that agencies like the SFIO, public enforcement agencies, they should use big data on companies. Now, that of course has issues of lawful access, because this is corporate information and anonymization and other things. So that is a very necessary part of it, and that, I mean, the two have to go in hand. Technology enables equally unregulated technology without respect of privacy, commercial, these things, compensation will create problems. So in that context, I don't know whether you've had a look at that aspect of it, and two, there must be international templates of how this is being handled in other jurisdictions outside India. So any comments on that?
Sir, actually, this problem is equally faced by all countries in the world. And my perspective, because it was a limited one paper, so it was about Ponzi schemes that have recently come up in India. I have not elaborated on the frauds that are going across the world and on the other aspects, because I said the financial frauds, it is an amalgamation of a lot of frauds. So I have focused on to a corporate fraud and that too on Ponzi schemes.
I'll respond to that a bit. Because the data that we have to have in such investigations is one data from the suspect company or the promoters, directors of it. So that we generally have from the coercive procedures that the law enforcement has power, either on its own or through the court processes. The second is we need data which is statutory nature, which is declared by companies every year, they return, so that we can always get from the statutory or the income tax returns we can get from the concerned authorities. The third data, which is very critical, is sometimes we need the communications between the companies. If they are India-based, we can have the call detail records from lawfully. And if we have emails, if the service provider is outside India, that for content we have to go for them, and most often than not, we do not get the content in most of these cases. So that makes the overall quality of data that's being used not complete, and the results are also not so good when we have. Sometimes a small data is missing and we get that data, the result becomes really good. So that's the part. Yeah.
That's a very valid question. Quicker issue. How do we rely upon data? How do we access data? How do we collect data? This at a time in India when we don't have a law on data protection. I have to begin by saying that India as a nation needs to address the legal, policy and regulatory issues pertaining to big data. Because big data is already being generated in a big volume within India. But the Indian Information Technology Act is thoroughly inadequate. It does not even recognize the concept of big data. It does not even have adequate legal frameworks. So when we talk about lawful access, even before lawful access, what is the quality of data that's being collected? Because in the absence of international standards being prescribed in India vis-a-vis the responsibilities of data entities and stakeholders to collect data, everybody is on their own. In fact, you take a sampling of about 100 Indian companies, and the chances are that almost 80 out of them would not be at least even be retaining the relevant data that's important. For example, the law does ask companies to retain data in the electronic form for a particular period. But the Information Technology Act 2000 and the rules and regulations are completely silent as to how much time period is required for data retention. So at any point of time, when a government agency asks for such data, the government agency is itself not clear what it will get, and even what it gets, it's also not clear whether it's reliable, what are the methodologies that are adopted for collecting the same. This at a time when India and Indian companies are increasingly being targeted by ransomware complicates the entire scenario. First and foremost, we need to appreciate that there's a complete lack of reporting in the country for any financial frauds within the country. Companies have a mindset issue. They believe if they report, they will be perceived to be insecure, and hence it will impact their market positions, their share capital, and their share positions in the stock markets. But the fact is that India also does not even have mandatory breach disclosure regime in place. For example, in many parts of the world, countries are saying enough is enough. The moment you come to know of a data breach in your company or corporate entity, you must immediately report it. Now, that's been enshrined in the law, and there have been penal consequences. But India has, by and large, refrained from coming up with a comprehensive legal framework for data breach notification. Instead, it's only post-demonetization that we've seen some massive growth. The Reserve Bank of India has now mandated banks, the moment you come to know of a cybersecurity breach, report within 2 hours. Well, on 4th of January 2017, the Indian Nodal Agency on Cybersecurity, being the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, has issued a notification. The notification says all stakeholders, all corporate sector, and all governmental departments are now mandated to report any cybersecurity breach that comes to their knowledge within a reasonable time. The government has still not defined what's a reasonable time, and in the absence of that, there's a lot of confusion. From 4th of March to till today, from 4th of January to 8th of March, 2 months have gone by, there's not a single reporting. Now, that's not to show that cyber security breaches have not happened, it just is people are not relatively very clear. But then the question is, even a corporate is currently inadequate to deal with appropriate big data sets that it needs to have in place, because ransomware is writ large. Large number of companies are increasingly being targeted by ransomware, but we are not talking. A new trend has emerged in the last 8 months, which is more and more corporates in India are being targeted from dark net attacks. Darknet, or what you call as the dark web, is that underbelly of the internet where your identity is completely hidden. You use Tor to go inside, and till today, law enforcement agencies are by and large inadequate to deal with the attribution issues pertaining to the darknet. And now with the advent of rifle coming in the last few months, it's now a different ballgame altogether. The creators of rifle actually are claiming that rifle is the most secure darknet that the world has ever known. And they have actually openly challenged that no law enforcement agency in the world has the capability to go ahead and breach the anonymity wheel that's been provided by the darknet. So I think going forward, it's very important that India as a nation needs to address issues pertaining to darknet. We need to have legal frameworks for protection of data. We need to specifically focus on the roles, duties, and responsibilities of intermediaries. And I just pause here to let you know, this is a new concept that India created in the year 2008. Prior to that, India was following the traditional UNCITRAL model, where we were talking about network service providers. But in 2008, we expanded the scope of network service providers to come up with a new category known as an intermediary. And the Indian law has defined intermediary in very, very broad terms to include any person who on behalf of another person is receiving, storing, or transmitting any particular electronic record, or is providing service with respect to that record, and is including telecom service providers, internet service providers, web hosting companies, online auction portals, online payment sites, cyber cafes, and online search engines, and online marketplaces. So clearly, India needs to refocus its vision on mandating some of the immediate requirements for data collection in the context of big data for intermediaries. Fortunately, the legislation has given sufficient arm to the government for secondary legislation. We'll talk more about it, but thank you for really highlighting all those issues. Very valuable. Thank you.
Sir, my question is related to the implementation aspect. All the use cases which have been talked about, law agencies have basically reacted. to some reporting by some of the members who have been impacted severely. Why can't we have proactive approach in which system tell us in advance that something fraud is going on and we have to act proactively?
Actually, the question is very valid, and government is moving towards fraud prediction, and you must have seen it. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs itself has moved ahead in it, and it has started with a project called Fraud Prediction Model, where you are actually analyzing the company data and looking for red flags which can actually pinpoint which companies are going in the wrong direction.
Okay,
And before frauds happen, it's a very, it's in a naive state. It has to be developed in a more, sophisticated manner.
Extension
But
of
it has
that
started.
question, why can't we have a single source of truth for everything as far as financial transactions are concerned? Just like universal ledger offered by Bitcoin technology, why can't we have it across all the banks following it? So that everybody is at the same pace at all time.
So such technology if it is available outside India in the developed countries, we aim and we target that in India also such
It is
kind
universal. It is universal technology. It is not outside, inside. It is universal technology. Bitcoin technology is universal. It is universal ledger.
The government of India has to take cognizance of this fact and move ahead in this. That is what we should do.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm really enthused by this very rich dialogue that we've had here and the high level of interest. Certainly, this is an area for future ICEGOV work. And I'd like to thank our speaker for her presentation. And also, as you know, today is International Women's Day. So I'm very pleased that we could start off with a female researcher. Very often we hear a lot about one of the big challenges, there not being enough women who are interested in the field of ICT. So we can see here that new trends are emerging. Now I'd like to call, first of all, can I ask all the speakers, all the researchers to sit at the front here, because there's some persons who haven't come up as yet. And I'd like to call Ms. Abhipsa Pal to present her paper on motivations of individuals contributing to open content creation projects, a cultural comparison between developed and developing countries. As we all know, there's a staggering amount of online content being created and which is populating the internet. For example, we hear staggering statistics about the number of years of video content being uploaded every day. Some of this content is being uploaded ad hoc by individuals, but there are also a number of projects, open source collaborations between various persons who are contributing to addressing problems. Apache, one of the most important softwares for helping the internet to operate, it was created in an open source model. So I give the floor to Ms. Powell.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. So my topic of presentation is motivations of why individuals contribute to open content creation projects. So one such example is Wikipedia, where people are contributing parallelly. And I have done a cultural comparison. I have tried to see how culture is affecting the motivations of these individuals and tried to see if there's a trend evolving for the developing countries, which is different from the developed world. The agenda of today's discussion, I would first introduce my topic and then talk about the literature from which the research question has evolved. So basically there are three broad areas of literature, the peer production and open content creation, and why people are motivated to contribute there, and how culture is affecting that. I have used Hofstede's cultural dimension for that. Then I have developed the propositions, and the propositions are basically saying how culture would affect individuals' motivations of contributing to these open content creation projects. And finally, I would conclude my topic. So nowadays we know that ICTs are ubiquitous and we have a network society. Everybody is connected through internet and network. It is because of this network society that open development, this concept of openness is possible, where people can freely contribute, openly contribute, and collaborate with each other to develop one common product. So this started with the very popular open source software, but now it has evolved from there into open content creation projects also. So one such example is Wikipedia. We also have other example, Open Directory by Mozilla, which is where people can enter the web directory addresses and develop the directory. So the basic question is, when people are contributing openly, they are basically doing it for free. They are not getting paid, and it's not the conventional work pay structure. So why are they doing it for free? Literature says that it is the motivation that guides people to do it for free, and these motivations can be broadly classified into two types. One is pro-social, when you are doing it for the society, and the other is personal needs oriented. So you're doing it because you enjoy doing it, or you're learning something from contributing to the project. Again, on a separate note, culture is highly intertwined with information system. Generally, culture would be affecting information system, information flow, and in this case, open development, open contributions would also be affected by culture. So in my research, I would like to see how culture is affecting the motivations of why people are contributing to these open projects. And how is this related to development? It is said that participation of people in the developing world in a way affects their emancipation, individual human emancipation, which will again lead to socio-economic development. Most of the studies related to motivations of open development are based, the data is taken from the developing world. So I would like to see if the data is taken from the developed Western economies. I would like to see if the developing world has a different set of motivations because they are culturally very significantly different from the developed economies. Coming to the exact research question, how national culture is impacting the motivation to open contribution. And the developed and developing country, every country will have its own national culture. So I would like to see how the developed countries and developing countries will have different motivations because of the difference in their culture. So if you can see, the dotted line is the research question basically, and it has already been established that the motivation leads to finally contribution to the open content creation projects. So if we study the motivation, we can finally understand how the contribution actually happens. Coming to the peer production and open content creation. So this peer production is a new model of production where everybody is connected through the network society and everybody is contributing together to form one product. A very flourishing example is Wikipedia. I don't know how many of you have contributed, but if you have contributed, you can see that you can easily put in a content. You can write down a content. If you know something about a movie or something, you can write it down and contribute to the Wikipedia. It will be a part of the Wikipedia as soon as you put it down there. And this contribution is possible globally because we have the internet, the network society today. But why, when I write down something about a movie, why am I doing it? Because I'm not getting paid for it. So whenever somebody is doing it on a voluntary basis, motivation plays a very important role. So the motivations in literature are mostly these factors, that is altruism, identification with the community, reciprocity, reputation, peer recognition, ego gratification. So so if I look into these factors that are there, I can broadly classify into two broad categories. This is also deriving from previous categories that has been there, like extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. So based on, so after classification, the two categories that I found was pro-social motivations, when you do it for the society, and personal needs, when you do it for your own fun and enjoyment, learning, etc. So now we know that motivations are guiding the open development. How is culture affecting motivations? So culture is basically, national culture is when norms, behaviors, beliefs, customs of one nation is binding all the people of that nation together. And this culture will influence motivations because historically cultures have been seen to influence motivations. I am using Hofstede's cultural dimensions to understand culture because he is like very well cited, and so the dimensions that I'm using is power distance. So a culture which is high on power distance will be okay with the hierarchical structure, and who is low on power distance will not enjoy a hierarchical structure. Individualists are people who work towards their own or their immediate family members' happiness, and collectivists are ones who identify themselves with a member of a community. Masculinity defines achievement-oriented, goal-oriented people, and femininity defines people who value relationships and non-materialistic goals. And dealing with uncertainty, some societies are okay with the fact that the future is uncertain, whereas some societies do not like uncertainty and want to avoid future uncertainty. So now from there, I have derived these propositions. So the first proposition is about power distance. So if a society is hierarchical in structure and accepts hierarchy, then they will not particularly be doing some work that is open contribution for particularly be doing that work for enjoyment, because they're okay with the hierarchical structure. But they want to gain reputation, they want to get peer recognition and climb up the power ladder using these things like peer recognition, building reputation by contributing to open work. So these are all connected to pro-social needs. Whereas personal needs oriented is like enjoyment, learning, and this will be people who are low on power distance. They will enjoy the decentralized structure of open development. Individualists, again, are people who who think about themselves and enjoy doing things like learning and enjoyment. So when these are again directly connected to personal needs oriented motivations, whereas collectivists are people who see themselves as a part of the community. Naturally, they will be more pro-social oriented. Uncertainty avoidance, the societies which like to avoid uncertainty, if they see that an open development project is going to benefit the society or their country in a longer term, then they will contribute to it. So they are doing it basically for pro-social reasons. Whereas people who are low on uncertainty avoidance, they will not think of such long-term benefits, and when they are doing it for their personal needs like enjoyment, learning, ego gratification. Again, similarly, for masculinity, societies that are high on it, they are achievement-oriented. So they will be doing it for learning and for their own enjoyment, whereas societies which are more femininity-wise, they value relationships and such. So they will be doing it for pro-social reasons. Now, how is this related to developing countries? So if you look at the shaded portion, it is seen that on an average, I'm not saying all the developing countries, on an average, the developing countries will score high on this, will score such that they will be high on the pro-social motivations. And this is important because, as I said, that if more number of people participate in open development projects, it will lead to socio-economic development of the countries. So understanding what is motivating people to participate in the process is very important for the development of the developing economies. Concluding the topic, I would say that the practical implications are the facilitators or the ones who are promoting the projects can understand which kind of project will be applicable to which culture, because we are saying that I can understand that this is whether I will be pro-socially or personal needs oriented ways motivated towards contribution to a project. So if a particular kind of project is it appeals to the pro-social needs, then it will work in a culture that also suggests pro-social motivations. Also, we can analyze the previously failed project with a cultural lens, because generally we tend to not do it, so we can do that. So concluding my topic, basically, because of the network society, today we have the collaboration and the peer production peer production economy that has risen up, and open content creation projects are there. So why are people working for free? I have tried to understand the motivations for people working for free and how culture can impact these motivations. There are some limitations of the study because I am talking about national culture. Culture is not equivalent to society. A nation is not equivalent to society, but culture will be more connected to society. But for this study, I am considering that most of the nation will also be evolving from one society. And also the polarity of the dimensions that I'm talking about, some of the countries, for example, India does not score very, so on individualism, collectivism, India scores somewhere in between. India is not very polar. So for such cases, it will be difficult to draw the propositions. So there will be some countries which will have conflicting nature, so they will not completely fall on the pro-social or personal needs oriented. So for future scope, we might study how these cultures will act out in contributions, and we can also use other measures of culture instead of just using polar Hofstad's dimensions. And this I have left it up to the proposition, so we can extend the study by using a survey method for some open content creation project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting theoretical paper, which lays out a map for very important future research. I'd like to take maybe 2 questions. Let's see, I see 3 hands. 4 hands. Okay, what I'll do is I'll take 2 questions now, and at the end we will try to see whether we can take some more. The gentleman here on my left. Thank you.
Thank you, Avib sir, for a nice presentation. My question is from that you said that we can extend it for a empirical study, survey method. So your propositions, there is some issue that I see that the national level Hofstede framework is at the national level. Motivation we are talking about that the individual level. So how will you bring this construct? Because there needs a variance in the sense whether you will be measuring those Hofstede dimension at the individual level. That's my question is. Because it is as a collective national level Hofstede framework, and motivation necessarily is for individually, it will vary for person to person, and then your other dimension will be same. So that is my question, because you are saying that you will do it through the survey method.
Hofstede's dimension is a national level scale. So if an individual is, my Hofstede dimension, I am an individual, but my Hofstede dimension will be predefined based on my country because it is based on national culture. So if I am doing a survey-based method, then what I will be seeing is, for example, if I take India, then I will be trying to see, I will be asking in the survey that what is the things that is motivating you, not what is your culture. So once if I see that if the things that are motivating me are pro-social, so you can measure, like you can have questions that will identify whether it is pro-social or personal needs oriented motivation that is guiding you to the individual who is contributing. So once I have this set, I will try to see, so I am already Indian, I already have my cultural dimensions done, so I will try to see that whether my proposition is, suppose it's saying that an Indian ranking this on this culture will be pro-socially motivated, whether that is matching with the actual survey questionnaire, actual individual, what the individual answered.
Something just occurred to me. I hope this isn't controversial. Yesterday we heard about the Digital India and the platform being open to the whole world to leverage these tools. I was just wondering whether this work could perhaps maybe explain some of the motivations behind this. I'm just throwing this out. Can I see? You don't have to answer if you don't wish. Okay. No, I was just saying, yesterday we saw we heard the announcement about the Digital India being available to the whole world as a platform. I was just wondering whether this work could maybe provide some, I don't know, insights, understanding around this particular project. So I hope I'm not being controversial. And let's see, there were several hands. Okay, so I took one question on this side. Is there anyone on the other? Okay, maybe I take one, the gentleman here, please.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation to put on the table the cultural issue. My question is, you are trying to understand the motivations, but on the other side, we know that most of the contributions are coming from individualistic countries. So you might have good altruistic motivations in some countries which are not enough to publish, while you might have small individualistic motivation in other countries, but they are enough to motivate people. Could you elaborate on this?
So you are saying that currently the contributions are mostly from economies which are individualistic by nature. So so in this study I'm not saying that more number of contributions will be coming from here. So I am trying to see that. So even if, say, suppose a collectivist country have very small amount of contribution, say 10 for instance, and another country individualistic has 100. So that is okay. I'm trying to understand why these 10 people are contributing on an average and why these 100 people are contributing on an average. So it is not like why more because there are many other factors why more number of people might be contributing in the developed countries which are more individualistic. It may not be only the motivations. So I am not taking into consideration why more number of people or lesser number of people are I'm saying that even if like very few people are contributing, are they motivated because of pro-social or individualistic reasons?
Thank you very much. We will save other questions hopefully for the end of the round. I will now hand over to Mr. Pavan Dugal, who will introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Last 24 hours have been monumental. Not only did the world see ICEGOV taking place at such a large scale in India, but it's these documents which have been released. It's been stated that the CIA was having access to people's smartphones. They were able to read WhatsApp messages and other encrypted messages of people across the world, and many private companies were giving them backdoor access without talking about that in the public domain. Now that comes as a very big shock. This is going to be even bigger than the Snowden revelations, should this come center stage. But I think for a lot of Indians have not even been woken up to this new reality. In India, though we are a secular nation, we are a land of many religions, but today India gets united by one single national religion, and that's the religion of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is India's national religion. Everybody is using WhatsApp. Audio, video, image, text, free. Wonderful, right? And we all do that without reading the terms and conditions of WhatsApp, which expose us totally because everything that we publish on WhatsApp is public information. There's no privacy. We stand exposed. So in this debate, the context of internet security and safety becomes very, very relevant. In India, whether you like it or not, whether people are talking about it or not, cyberbullying and cyber harassment are the #1 problems in Indian educational institutions, colleges, schools, and universities. So in this context, it's very important to understand how can we work forward towards internet safety. There's a school of thought who says, look, you're a child, you're lost in the deep woods, and there are all kinds of animals who are out to attack you. That's what your current presence on the internet is all about. But despite us being a small child, I think we can still do some proactive steps to try to protect ourselves while being online, and that's precisely the subject of the next paper. I'll now call upon the presenters, Ms. Chandani Agrawal and Akshat Singhal, who would be presenting on the subject Securing Our Digital Natives, a study of commonly experienced internet safety issues and one-stop solution. Over to you, Ms. Chandani Agrawal.
Good morning, respected chair members and my fellow colleagues. And to learn about the comparison of their perception and the actual knowledge. And on the other hand, we are outlining the landscape of threats. Through this study, I want to make the society cyber safe. Now, if we see our digital native, our youngsters are busy in their own virtual world, and unaware about their surroundings, about the happening in the real world, and they don't know even what can be happen to them. So I want to narrate a small story here. The 14-year-old girl accepted a friend request from a person without knowing. Out of the curiosity, she accepted the friend request. And the contextual text conversation occurred, and other things that they planned to meet. And that girl went to meet that person and telling her mom that she is going to see her sick friend. And that girl got kidnapped, and that person took her a place where already 4 to 5 teenager girls were locked. That girl was drugged and brutally raped, and that things happened with her repeatedly. So this was a case at Jakarta as per the internet resources. We can see that India is the second highest country in terms of internet users after China at the top. So it's our moral responsibility to work together towards this global issue. Now, what the teenagers search? 21% of youngsters are active on WhatsApp, and unfortunately, educational sites are taking place only 7%. Unsurprisingly, social media, up to 47% of our youth, they are on social media. So it's alarming situation, alarming. Why? Because 83 million Facebook accounts are fakes and dupes. Fake and duplicate profile and spam account, they make up a large part, 8.7% of Facebook active pages, and 14.3 million undesirable accounts have been created for purpose like spamming or giving a professional lead or like advertisements. A Facebook crime every 40 minutes, from killing to grooming, as 12,300 cases are linked to the site. Many cases, they remain unreported or they got defamed. And Facebook is only one of the several social media platforms. If we look around our own kids, they immediately take Snapchat or post everything they do, even they are eating food at a restaurant or going to see a movie, they immediately update the status on their social media site. So internet is increasing at an exponential rate. Is the safety increasing at the same rate? So our concern is to safeguard our small netizens. I want to ask a question. Are we safe? Even we also don't know about most of the things that are making us unsafe. So to deep dive into the matter, I just took a sample data of my school students and found the culprit. They are replying back to the spam mails, phishing mails, and some lucrative offers, and sharing their personal information. How many of us read the policy guidelines before creating a Gmail account or creating Facebook account or to register the WhatsApp account? We are giving the permission to the person that they can use our personal information as they want. So, knowledge of being victimized, it's a big question. Even the victims, they don't know that they are caught in a web through just clicking on the spam mails or the adware, spyware. Our entire information is going out without our information, or even we don't know about that. I took a survey of, again, with the same set of students. Even they don't know about certain things that happening around them, and they are getting victimized, and they are enjoying that. They're sharing their information. They say proudly that they have 12,000 friends or 4,800 friends on the Facebook, and they don't know about everyone. So threats around us, identity theft, which can come with simple clicking on a spam mail, cyberbullying. Even they don't tell about they are bullied. And I see many cases around me, they plan fight outside the school on the Facebook, social distrust, online grooming, emotional implication, and the most dangerous one is the violent imagery, which may sometimes attempt to the suicide, which may sometimes lead to the suicidal attempt of a child. So what traditional ways we know? We complain on home site, we call on a cyber cell or to a police. Of course, this is the first desired steps we take. Sometimes they need counseling or the immediate help. So I want to search for an easy way around. So need is a mother of invention. I developed a mobile app because 90% of youth is on mobile devices. And it is easily accessible by the general public, and it has a live expert consultation, and it also provides offline guidelines. So presenting this app, it's a complete guide to cybersecurity awareness, providing a test that checks whether you are vulnerable and shows you the level of vulnerability also, providing guidelines to use the internet safely for students, parents, and corporate. As on Twitter, the possibility of cyber stalking or online defaming is much more. So, and we can launch a complaint to the cyber expert directly. Even the knowledge about latest threats and other threats is there. The cyber cell number for all over the India is provided on this app. And the highlighting feature, we have cyber experts on panel. They are working with us for this social cause. And do's and don'ts. See, in my opinion, the child makes a mistake where the parents think he is safe. There is one app, Tinder, that is very hot amongst the youngsters to do the wrong acts, and parents, they think it's an educational app. So the outcome, in this outcome, on my email that associated with this app separately, we got many cases and over 100 cases resolved. That is again from school students. And we are effective in resolving a cause. We got more than 2,000 plus downloads and good reviews. And it's available globally. And I'm working on the localization of app so that it can be reached to the villagers and the people who don't know English, and for the regional language I'm working. And the future road, it is not ending here. It's a beginning to work in this social cause together. And I think I am possibly succeeded in resolving it to some extent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a very innovative initiative that's been taken. We open the floor for any questions that anyone may have in the context. We have one hand there and we have one hand there. So 2 questions before I hand over to Amit. Sir, can we have the mic there, please? Your questions.
We are talking about that we don't read the fine prints or the details, but according to me, what is the option? Even if we go through that, whether it is Facebook or WhatsApp, do we have another option? According to me, the authorities should ensure that those fine prints are not allowed in any way. They should be conducive to the country or to the culture, wherever it is.
Thank you. That's a very valid question.
Sir, basically, this is about our students who are creating their fake Gmail accounts, and they are putting illicit matter on the sites. And after that, see, in my school, one case happened, and the parents were in trouble. And the girl, she was attempting to suicide for that thing. So unknowingly, they put some matter or text which gets circulated. This is for them. Facebook has 12 pages of reading agreement. So this is about that. Whenever we put anything, we should aware about what we are writing on this. This context is about that point.
Well, technically speaking, we have a choice. We can either be on a platform or not be on a platform. Being not on the platform may look not very savvy, we may be considered backward, but then you have a choice. Even if you want to be on the platform, only share information on a need-to-know basis. You don't need to be broadcasting each and everything about your own self, because a lot of people don't realize the smartphones that we have. Is there anyone in this room who's not on a smartphone? Anyone who has a feature phone? I see no hands. So with all of us on smartphone generation, our smartphone, when it takes a picture, is capturing our latitude, longitude, and metadata. And we mindlessly keep on uploading the same onto the internet, exposing our own physical selves per se. But so, very rightly said, you will have to do your own due diligence caution. The companies hardly give you any choice. So you can be on your platforms, but be with care. Handle with care is what we say. We have a second question this side. Sir, yourself.
Yeah, my question is that only the children are not vulnerable to such, are not victimized. Your sample is just like a convinced sampling. You have taken only your students. So if we have taken, because the mistakes are committed by everyone, the different age group, so it would have been the wonder if you have taken the different sample belonging to different age groups. My question is that even we receive in Gmail from the authentic website that kindly check your spam. So if you are not having a message in inbox, your mail inbox, so kindly check the spam. So what's your opinion about that? Because we don't have a choice, rather clicking on the spam. So my question.
So this we have to see. The phishing or spam mails, they have the subject that is much more lucrative. And it's, when you see the first look, if you go through the guidelines, how to check the spam mail, you will immediately know about the spam mails. And what I want that we as a digital migrants should teach our digital natives. This is my main purpose of the study. And I have studied not only my school students, I have circulated this app with my other school teachers who are also, and the students are also downloading the app in entire India. You can see the stats also. It's available globally. So the concern is to educate the society. We know about these things, but many of the people, they are not knowing about the things.
Well, at this juncture, I see one more hand, but before I come to you, Paul, can I request you to slightly comment?
Yes, very, very quick comment. First of all, I just like to say I have a slightly different take with regards to access to platforms. I think there needs to be, we need to readdress this balance between, if we say, corporate rights and also the rights of individuals. And again, when it comes to this sort of fine print, of course, this calls for consumer education and also consumer activism in terms of making sure that these terms which companies are proposing fit the cultural context, the ethical context of the societies in which they're operating. And I just want to say one more thing. Very often we talk about the youth, the young people. It's very easy to sort of pick on them, and of course it's a very big concern here because in many countries, many developing countries, youth take up a very large segment of the population. However, there is a great need to address these types of concerns and also raise awareness among older persons. Many of these persons are not digital natives, and as we move towards greater e-government, more and more older persons must get online. So they also need to be aware of how to keep themselves safe. Otherwise, they may find their savings at risk. Thank you.
Amit, you want to quickly add?
What she has proposed for students, I would tell that it's equally true for all the adults, that the awareness is equally low, or rather I would say more low than what these students today are. When cases are reported to us, reporting is only when there is a crisis. There have been a lot of attempts, but the reporting is not there. And even after reporting, before registering a case, there were many parents who would say, we don't want to register a case, we just want to have this particular tweet deleted, we just want this particular post to be deleted. That's all for them. But the fact remains that there has been an offense, and I cannot agree more that awareness is the key. Because detection of an offense that depends upon a lot of other constraints. At times we are not able to detect. International cooperation is one of the major constraints that we face day in and day out. And if we are aware, we prevent it. There's nothing like it, because detection and finally taking to court and prosecuting is a long haul, and generally it's not taken up to that level successfully.
We have one question here with Mr. Anup Bose, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, before I hand over to Amit. And Mike here, please.
Good afternoon. Chandiji, in fact, had talked about illicit materials being put out on the net. There's also been talk earlier about how minors are being trapped through the internet, and that has led to rapes, a spate of rapes and abductions and so on. There is still another alarming thing that is happening in this world today, and which is peculiar to modern times, and that is the threat of global terrorism, where terrorists are targeting not only people, but even students in schools, the madrasas and so on. And as Pavan would know, most of the people who've joined terrorist organizations like IS and so on have been trapped through the internet, you see. Now, they are trying to poison the minds of young people through the internet, and this is a problem to which the United Nations is on it now. When we are tackling global terrorism, we have to also see how global terrorism is targeting the youth. And by youth, we mean people who have, the very definition of youth is that the period between childhood and manhood, which is characterized by vigor and enthusiasm, but weakness and inexperience at the same time. So they are capitalizing on the weakness of the youth and in drawing them into the traps, that are ultimately destabilizing the world and posing a great threat to humanity. This is a problem that we have to address ourselves to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's extremely relevant. You want to speak something?
Thank you so much. And what I want to say at the last, prevention is better than cure, and seed is always the best crop. So this app is already available on Google Play Store with the name Cyber Security Guide. It's freely downloadable, and of course, it's for awareness of the society globally. And we should work hand together for this global cause. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Shani, and we've talked about this important stuff. Cyber radicalization, cyber extremism, cyber terrorism. These are the new dangers to internet safety. But Paul, what's your vision?
I'd just like to interject one thing. There's also a need for caution. There are different modalities, different methodologies of research into cause and effect in many of these areas. And depending on which school of thought and who you discuss with, the statistics look quite differently in terms of the role that the internet is playing in triggering radicalization. One of the things that they talk about is that the internet, this needs to be taken within the context of the social environment. You have some people who suffer from certain mental illnesses, or they're probably not well integrated into societies. And this, the presence of this type of content, it exacerbates and tips them over the edge. So we have to be a little careful in terms of how we interpret the research. Of course, we need to be cautious. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very pertinent. With those words, I'm going to hand this over to Amit to take on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Paul. That brings us to the last paper for today. That's about digital distraction, another negative effect of technology. We have been hearing for cybercrime, we have been hearing for cyber terrorism, but digital distraction is one thing would not normally come to our mind, that this is also an adverse consequence of the technology that we are facing as of now. The technology is changing our behaviors, technology is changing our relationships, and the material that I could see on the net, the digital distraction has led to reduction in our productivity. We have, as a generation, where we have seen nothing digital to a generation where now we have smartphones. I can feel it on a personal level that productivity has gone down, and there are a lot of distractions, a lot of negative energies being created because of technology. So with that background, I'll invite Priyanshi Agrawal, H.S. Sahana and Rahul Day for presentation on their paper, Digital Distraction.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'll be presenting on behalf of everyone. So my name is Sahana, and I would be talking about digital distraction mainly, and what is it about, and what are the ways to overcome it, and maybe, few things on what research we conducted and how we got to know about this term called digital distraction. So basically, digital distraction is distraction mainly due to the electronic devices and media, which will break your concentration from the main piece of work you're doing. And I guess everybody can resonate with this, and everybody feels it on an everyday basis. So digital distraction can happen inside or outside the workplace, and workplace is something which is considered as a formal environment setup, where individuals are present, like maybe a classroom or an office. So people nowadays find it difficult to sit in a one go and complete a project or a task without checking an email on the phone or text on the phone or reading an article on internet. So this kind of distraction actually decreases the time, increases the time taken to complete a task, because they find it difficult to switch back, and there is a cost associated with it, and that is the time taken. So basically, a study by Gloria Mark, who studies digital distraction at University of California, says that it takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return back. So we think that it's a matter of 5 seconds or 2 seconds to see a message, but once you're distracted, it takes a lot of time to get back to your original task. So right now, when in government departments where there have been stress on e-governance and people are going through digital transformation to do this, most of the internal processes are getting digitized. So this sometimes can lead to loads of digital distraction, which I'll be discussing later. So there could be multiple reasons for digital distraction, and a few of them I've listed here. So first thing is cognitive surplus, where people are wanting to use their free time more constructively these days, that they want to actively participate in different activities. There is a rush for utilizing one's cognitive surplus. This can lead to a digital overload, where people are not only participating in like reading articles, participating in blogs, video sharing and all, not only in their free time, but also during their productive time, that is during their office hours or something like that. So this is one reason. And one more is digital overload. As such, you can see that currently on an average, a person consumes 3 times more information than in 1960. So this is not a surprise at all. So there is a person cannot pay attention to a single task, because he's juggling between multiple screens. Like you look at the laptop, you have your mobile phones in hand. Even when you're watching TV, you have multiple things in your hands. So this is one of the reasons which can lead to digital distraction. And few other things are like policies of companies are also, they are made in such a way that you are having no work-life balance at all. Like people are expected to be available 24/7. And one of the examples which we had was like in Karnataka, there was a cop who was transferred to a different place because she had kept a call on hold of a political leader. And later there was so much controversy that she had to resign from her work. So this is seen more in places where there is a strong hierarchical structure, like maybe a government organization, where people are expected to report to their seniors immediately when they ask for it. And nowadays, with a lot of attached devices like Fitbit, smartphone, smartwatch, which is always there with you, it can lead to a lot of push of information towards you, and this can lead to a distraction. Like whenever you don't need, also a ping pops up. So this kind of thing can lead to digital distraction. So basically, to understand this in the perspective of educational institutions, we conducted a qualitative survey among the students of premier business schools across various age and various, work experience kind of thing. And some of the facts are surprising, but at the same time, I think everybody is aware of this. Like WhatsApp is one of the most used application, and people kind of respond within 15 minutes 90% of the times. That means that almost everybody responds on a WhatsApp ping without ado. And people are also so much anxious about losing out that they're losing out on something, like they miss a message or mail or a call, that they always want the smartphone with them. And if they don't find it, they get haywire, I don't know, they feel that there is a fear, there is kind of a fear that they don't have a smartphone with them. And most used apps are like WhatsApp and Facebook, which you can, clearly see. Every person who has a smartphone has this application. And people use this on laptops as well now, because the companies have made it easier by putting it on laptops as well. So this kind of, this kind of feedback came from the people who responded to this survey, and this is this was also seen via the applications that we installed. So basically, when you say that how do you want to measure digital distraction, we say that it is in terms of the lost time and the additional time that is required to reorient back to the task. So any kind of interruption can lead to distraction, and then that can hinder the performance of the person. So this can be analyzed by conducting an experiment as such, where you can have a simulated work kind of a environment, basically like an office or a study environment, where you can be given a task like composing a mail or writing a piece of code, and in between you get distraction. You are probed to distractions like a ping or a message. And then when such a distraction is happening, you can measure what is the impact of it, like how much time it would have taken, but how much more time it is going to take because of this, or what are the errors that are committed. So this kind of helps you find out what is what is a measurement, how can the digital distraction be measured. And this can be seen, the impact can be seen on organizations across the world. So some departments that implement transformation for e-governance, like they end up having more digital distraction. Like for example, if e-office is used in central government offices, like they can lead to an increased digital usage in government offices as well. And that is what people are trying to do right now. And there will be an overload of emails or several online requests, because of which there is a rapid increase in digital distractions in the government organizations as well. Earlier we thought it's only prone in private organizations, but now you can see that it's happening across. So these are some of the ways to overcome digital distractions. I know most of them are aware of it, but still people are not able to overcome it. Like some of them are aware that they are digitally distracted, but they are not making any efforts to reduce it. So basically, you should try to make some efforts to reduce the time that you're spending on digital devices. This can be done by installing some apps which gives you a notification or a pop-up saying that you are too much on your phone. And then you should always try to overcome the fear of missing out, that you should relax for a while. Like, keep your phones aside. So things can happen without you. A phone call from your office will not, it will not make the things go haywire if you're not there. So when it's your personal time, keep it out, keep your phones out of your reach. And then you should stop multitasking. That every person is trying to multitask, look at his messages, do his work. So this actually lowers the processing capability of brain, and they're usually you're slower at switching from one task to another. So instead if you concentrate on one thing, then maybe you'll perform better and in much lesser amount of time. And first and foremost, turn off your notifications. Please never keep your notifications on, because it keeps probing you to go back to your phones. And you are the owner of the phone and not the other way around. But these days it is the opposite as such. And also you should try to limit your visits to websites which are time-inducing. Like Facebook, if you just open, you can stay on for hours on those websites. So basically, try to limit your time on that and monitor your time there. Keep a limit that if I'm spending some time, let me spend 5 minutes, or let me spend 10 minutes and come back to your work. So, and also counter fear of being unable to respond. Like, there is a lot of pressure of losing job that is making people workaholic and responding to messages and calls immediately. So even the labor laws are not employee friendly, and people are expecting the employees to be available all the time. So such kind of laws have to be implemented such that people get their personal time and are not forced to be digitally attached always. So these are a few things which we underwent during our research. So any questions? Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Any questions, please? Mike.
Thank you. It was a very interesting presentation. As someone who's perpetually digitally distracted, I take several lessons from it. Having said that, there is this notion of utility and productivity, okay, that needs to be unpacked. And I mean, I really enjoyed the presentation, okay. Part of it is, the way I see it, is that we are getting more and more narcissistic, okay, and therefore the selfie culture and, you know, various other things that are coming in. I think we have to learn to live with digital distraction as distinct from curbing it. The second question I want, you know, you talked about Facebook, Twitter, etc. I can assure you, I worked in the United Nations for a long time, and it was like, oh, you know, whatever. Now organizations are increasingly, especially with regard to campaign mode stuff, turning to precisely these digital platforms that are considered to be distracting. So, you know, how do we sort of, you know, look at this going forward? Because organizational culture and the manner in which they value work and productivity is very different now than from the time when your perfectly straightforward notion of, you know, being at work, looking at it as, you know, clearing file, getting the job done as productivity, but that's probably less and less true now than what was true before.
Yeah,
because digital distraction also helps you think.
Correct. So basically, when you say that marketers are or people are going for digital, it's true because your eyes are always on those screens. So earlier, maybe people used to watch television or media when they're having spare time. So what is expected out of us is that we should be going towards digital listening when we have spare time. Like you can do your Facebooking or use any of the social media platforms when you have a lot of spare time. But people are getting so much addicted to it that they are not bothered about the work that they have to be completing, but instead they get into this social media platforms every now and then. So because of this, what is basically affecting a person as a human is that the stress level is increasing because he's stretching the number of hours he's working. So maybe he could have completed the task in 8 hours, but he's completing it in 12 hours. So it's not wrong that we are getting digitally savvy. There is nothing wrong with that. But as it said that the phone shouldn't be your owner and you should be the owner, is that you shouldn't be knowing to control yourself, control the amount of time you spend on it. So that is what I think is relevant as such, because nowadays it's going beyond control. That's it.
I think Suraj, you rightly said, there's a madness around, and we'll have to find a method in the madness. We'll have to live with the madness of the digital distraction. There's no way we can go on top of the Himalayas and say, well, I'm disconnected. Even there, I'm also not disconnected. But I think the method in the madness, excellent presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next question. You had a question here. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm distracting you from sort of getting down. Yes, this is indeed, in fact, a very big menace today. In fact, some time back I was reading a very interesting article in the Harvard Business Review which talked about conquering digital distraction. You see, at many levels, you find people being distracted. You've even found members of parliament in our country who are sitting in Parliament House and watching porn on their digital systems and not concentrating on the work that they should be doing. There was yet another member of Parliament who, instead of being inside Parliament House, was digitally taking pictures and tracking the security arrangements in the Parliament House. You see, these are the forms of distraction that we must be very careful about. As a lawyer, I can tell you, we have a lot of these marital discord problems that come, where wives, they come to court and say, my husband is distracted by his e-girlfriend or e-lover and has no time for me, and he spends more time digitally and is being distracted from me. This is becoming a major social problem, and marriages are cracking because of digital distraction. And when we talked of terrorism and other things, one related fact is also now recently you found so many people turned up to attend the funeral of a terrorist in Kashmir. Now these people were all digitally brought together. This is also a form of distraction where women came out of their houses, didn't attend to their cooking and other work. Men came out of their offices and colleges and schools, and children came out, you see, getting distracted. So attending the funeral of a terrorist may also well turn out to be a distraction that ultimately saps the strength and the vitality of a nation, you see, when you look at it in a much larger canvas, you see. And therefore, as the Harvard Business Review said, how would you find the ways and means of conquering digital distraction, you see? You have to conquer it, you see, like, in a very Churchillian sense, you see, where, again, since I talked of Churchill, and this is something which Pavan has also heard, whether it's terrorists or people who are distracting you from your main purpose, you see. After all, if somebody is running a child porn racket through the internet, somebody, even as a member of parliament, watching in parliament, is being distracted. So to that, it's a very Churchillian message, you see, that we have no truck or parley with you, or the grisly gang that work out your wicked will. You do your worst, we'll do our best. I think that's the only way we can conquer digital distraction. Thank you.
Yes, very true, sir. So as an individual, it's your own responsibility. No, nothing can be done more than that. Like if you think that there is if there is something that is hindering your productivity or utility as such, you should make sure that you are the ones who are taking measures towards. And there are technology which is helping you with that also. Like there are applications which are preventing you from, digital itself is helping you to not be digitally addicted. So maybe in those ways you can overcome it. And mainly it is about awareness that, okay, whether I'm supposed to be using the application, using such social media platforms for talking about every instance of my life, or should there be a level or a control over it? So it's up to the person to decide on it and make sure that such things doesn't occur as such.
Paul would like to make a small comment.
Yes, I'd just like to interject something to the debate. As we know, for example, currently we have globalization as a really important force, and that means, of course, working across time zones. So being part of teams which are actually operate within different time zones. So again, this of course presents challenges. Imagine you're here and you're working with someone in maybe British Columbia. You know, very vast different time zones, different work and day times. We're also seeing in some countries, for example, in France and in Germany, legislation being introduced which is trying to somehow mediate these sort of issues about how much time persons spend responding to, let's say, corporate communications. And one thing which is quite interesting, and I think especially for India, we also hear about companies like Google, for example, introducing to their employees techniques as part of their orientation, techniques like mindfulness, meditation, as a way of dealing with the sort of stress that comes from having to respond to many things at the same time. So lots of very interesting elements and dimensions in this area. Thank you.
My name is Rahul Day. I'm a co-author on the paper. There were some very interesting comments. I just thought I should respond to them. Part of the argument that we were building up in writing this paper was looking at the industrial era regulation of the 8-hour workday. It came from labor unions fighting for this right to be able to work for a limited amount of time and to have their own space at home. Now, when we began this study, I'm a professor, I teach in classes, and Sahana was a student in one of my classes, and I asked her, how many notifications did you get during my class? Because I permit them to bring their devices to class, and she and her, our co-author, Priyanshi, said they get about 100 notifications during the period of 90 minutes in which they are in class. Now, we had to ask this question, what is wrong with that? One is, of course, they're wasting time. They should have been listening to me instead of working in class. But the other part is equally important, and it has, and in fact, we are unpacking the utility argument here. If the corporation or the government is paying your salary to be working the 8 hours, the 8-hour 9 to 5 has practically disappeared. Digital distraction comes in as an issue because the employee is both distracted during the hours they're supposed to be in office, plus they're also being pulled away from their leisure time in which they're supposed to be at home. There is hardly any of us who doesn't take a call or respond to a message when you're not on that 8-hour shift. I'm putting 8 hours in quotes because it frankly doesn't exist anymore. What happened to the government official who worked from 9 to 5? That government official has, I think, disappeared. They're all working all the time. I was joking with one of our colleagues here who's organizing this conference that she has an octa-core processor. She's perpetually doing multitasking while at the same time working on something. So this is a very strong, both an ethical and a legal issue. We do not have laws to control this, but I think unions will emerge who will demand that an equivalent of the 8-hour workday be evolved again in the digital era. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor Day. That was really, you summarized it. There's an ethical issue, there's a legal issue behind that. Pawan would like to make a comment.
I just would want to add on your argument. Digital distraction has a direct connection with digital wellness. And now increasingly countries across the world are looking at digital wellness related regulations and policies. But I want to take this argument on to the next paradigm. We're only talking about digital distraction from the perspective of individuals or at best organizations. I want to talk about digital distraction from the perspective of state actors. Today, states across the world are digitally distracted. So consequently, none of them are concentrating on key things that we currently require. The focus of this particular session was information ethics and darknet. No country in the world is willing to take on by the horns the issue of how do we tackle the entire cybercrime that's happening on the darknet, what kind of rules and regulations that we need to put up in place for attribution of criminal activities. Remember, we had a huge debit card fraud case in India. 6.5 million debit cards were impacted. The attribution apparently happened from another country. But there's no proof, and there's no electronic evidence to give the nexus that this happened from a particular time. So the rules of attribution internationally have to be definitely put up in place as we go forward. Further, I think cybersecurity is almost becoming ubiquitous. But a majority of the countries are still digitally distracted because barring a few handful of countries like China, like Germany and Australia, others are miles behind and they are not doing anything on regulating the legal policy issues pertaining to cybersecurity. On top of it, we thought artificial intelligence is a decade away. We are completely off the mark. Artificial intelligence has already come in here. Internet of Things is a part of the mainstream in India. Today, try finding out a normal television on an Indian market. You will be surprised. A majority of the brands have stopped manufacturing normal TVs. They're only manufacturing smart TVs. So it's time that the countries of the world wake up to these new emerging paradigms, whether it's of Internet of Things, whether it's of 3D printing, whether it's privacy, and finally of jurisdiction. We are all on top of the Internet. Internet has made geography history. But still, internet jurisdiction is one of the biggest problems that we currently face. And finally, I think world over, the countries need to wake up and give more teeth to ethic-related issues. Most of the time, information ethics is relegated to the background because it's felt it's not important. There's no penal mechanism behind it. I think countries have to quickly wake up to this reality, considering that we don't have an international law in this regard at all. In fact, we don't even have an international cyber law. 2 years back, I've been advocating at the WSIS Forum and otherwise that the world needs an international convention on cyber law and cyber security law, so that at least the common minimum denominators of commonly accepted principles which countries are accepting could become starting points for discussion going forward. So a lot of work needs to be done, and it will be interesting to see how further developments takes place. Over to you. Well, the Pokemon Go is massive. People have been driving and doing Pokemon Go, killing people, and now not just they are being tried for murder, but the question is, can the Pokemon Go company be also tried for murder, despite having specific terms and conditions saying, I'm not going to be responsible, you take your own insurance when you play my own game. So,
Mike, please. Mike.
Yeah, my question is about, which the last point which you flagged, and this is, I think, runs across the various presentations. Internet knows no boundaries, no national cultural footprints. It is a society and a world of its own, and nations and states don't recognize it, legal jurisdictions don't recognize it. While international law may have its own time coming, what about, are there any countries or jurisdictions like, say, the EU or others which have tried to create a kind of a plurilateral arrangement? Or India, like in the physical space, issues with violence and other issues, we've tried to address it through a series of mutual legal assistance treaties, and today India has practically such treaties with something like close to, I believe, 150 countries. So has anything is anything like that happening? And law is one part of it. Since everything operates on technical standards, some uniformity in standards, any moves happening there, either on a bilateral or plurilateral or multilateral basis? Is there anything in the works?
For the law enforcement, I'm going to hand it over to Amit, but tell me on a legal perspective, legally speaking, we have nothing. Right now, a few weeks back, NATO has released the Talon Manual 2.0, which is now going to say that rules of international law are going to be applicable to cyber operations, which is nothing new because it's something that the world exactly knew. But technically speaking, countries are very, very hesitant to come to a one common minimum platform. So consequently, we have had the traditional mechanisms like the Convention on Cybercrime of Council of Europe, but it's a regional exercise. It only has about 45 countries, though there are some countries outside the US which have done it. But now what's of more relevance is something that started quietly happening in a country like China. China has, in the last 1.5 years, quietly come up with two big legislations, one on national security and the other one on cyber security. The net of these two regulations is that for the first time, here is a country which has come up with a concept known as cyber sovereignty. They say my cyber sovereignty as a nation just does not extend within the territorial boundaries of China. It extends to the entire of cyberspace, it extends to the outer space, it extends to the Arctic and Antarctic regions. So now we are beginning to see a new interesting phase where countries are saying, I'm no longer waiting for international principles of law to develop. Yes, bilaterally, I'm engaging into cooperation agreements. So US and China, UK and China, India, UK have these anti-hacking agreements in place, like USSR, Russia and China. But that's one component. Countries are saying, let me now go up with a more innovative way. Let me now start developing and drafting my laws in such broad terms so that I can just about capture as much space as possible. And the interesting element is that the China model is now increasingly gaining attention in large number of other countries. Countries are saying, at the time of interpretation, we will see. But why worry? Let me draft my laws in as broad areas as possible. So very quickly, we are now going to say that cyber law will not just apply to cyberspace, it will also apply to outer space, including China has now come up with an anti-hacking satellite, which effectively says that other satellites are capable of being hacked, and they are repeatedly being hacked. And the fact is, we had this instance of a satellite of a country where the satellite went dark for 16 hours because that got taken over by another sovereign power, and they were trying to manipulate stuff. So I think it's a very interesting time. We still have not final word said yet, but these interesting developments are taking place. On top of it, India is now coming up with a very unique concept. Till now, legally we know about the concept of jurisdiction, that is based on cause of action or your physical location. For the first time, India is now saying, it's time to move on. Let's come up with a new school of jurisdiction, which is to say data-based jurisdiction. Where your data is will determine where the jurisdiction of a particular dispute is going to happen. This is not yet been accepted by a large number of stakeholders, but that's a good, interesting development. So all said and done, these are very interesting times, but with cybercrime being the de facto mode, I think we need to do far, far more in terms of effective implementation. And more significantly, we cannot allow these rogue guys to hide behind the so-called cloak of anonymity. And therefore, I think countries quickly need to work in the direction of intermediary liability. These guys have had too much of free play at large. It's time to make them accountable for what happens on your network. You will have to take proactive, cogent steps. But I think from the law enforcement, over to you, Amit.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that's what Pawan was mentioning, Council of Europe, that's popularly known as Budapest Convention, and only around 40 countries, they are part of it. India has not signed it. There are certain reservations about definition of offenses and whether it will compromise national sovereignty. So we are still not part of it. US is part of it, and most of the European countries, they are part of it. And for cybercrime, with this agreement, they can get data on a real-time basis. So that has been going on, but India is not part of it as yet. In India, we have still age-old letter rogatory procedure that was 100 years back, that's belonging from one court to the other, that the Indian court is sending a request to a US court is a matter of committee that will agree to that request. The word over from 1955, it has gone to mutual legal assistance between US and Switzerland was first, and now India has signed 39 mutual legal assistance treaties, but still there is no act for legitimizing the input that we are getting through that request. So again, we are left with that we have treaty with a nation, but still we cannot secure evidence in a legal way from that nation. Again, we are going back to that age-old letter rogatory method, and effectively rules out getting evidence on a real-time basis in electronic. In electronic form, there's been a good development that it's channel led by US that's used for preservation. That we know that if they don't get the data for 90 days, we'll have it, there's a volatile data, it get erased. So with that channel, we can have the evidence preserved for 90 days and then further extended by 90 days till the time we get the formal letter of request. But the fact of the matter is that the letter of request that's taking nearly a year to get executed, and by the time we get some data, the relevance is lost or the data that we get is incomplete. So that's the level of international cooperation with the service providers. They have their channels for law enforcement. They sometimes, if the information, like for Google, if the information is related to India or Indian subjects, they'll provide the information, but not otherwise. So that's not a very promising state of things that at times we are left to fend with the data available here to prosecute persons, and at times it's not enough to get the conviction in court of law. Yeah.
After demonetization, India has seen a very fertile 15 weeks. Fertile 15 weeks of massive increase in cybercrime. In fact, from 15th of August 1995 till this morning when I'm talking with you, if I was to pick up one 15-week period, that was the most fertile. This is the 15-week period post-demonetization. The kind of massive cybercrimes, financial frauds that have increased is not funny. According to an industry report that was come up with ASSOCHAM, they have predicted that India is going to see a 67% increase in mobile frauds in 2017 alone. And as a nation, we don't have the adequate legal frameworks, the law is not in place. Fortunately, the government has now announced that they will be amending the Information Technology Act, but then we have evidence-related issues. Amit talked about that. With the Indian Supreme Court now coming heavily upon the law of electronic evidence, today in India, trying to prove electronic evidence is a nightmare. Trying to get any kind of a printout proved in a court requires you to get a certification under the Indian Evidence Act. And the court says, well, if you give the certification, that's level 1. We will make your evidence admissible. After that, if the opposite party contests it, that's level 2. You go and prove that this has not been tampered, altered, or manipulated in any manner. So clearly the challenges are immense and huge, but a lot of work needs to be done. And I think these kinds of sessions help us have the right thinking and the right perspectives of how to move forward.
Any more questions for Sahana? She's been waiting. So, yeah. Thanks a lot for me. We all understand that awareness is the key, and you have made us all aware that digital distraction is something we have to look for. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Paul, you have the setting up.
Yes, I can only agree with Pavel about the importance of forums such as this for debate. I mean, if we think about laws, ideally, the laws that we operate under should represent the values that individuals and societies that we place they represent our values. And of course, when we start moving into these global and local environments, where we heard earlier in that presentation, we talked about the Hofstede's work and the differences in societies, collectivism versus individualism, masculinity versus femininity. We see the sort of complexity that goes into making laws. So again, I can only encourage that we continue this sort of debate, exchange, searching for new experiences, searching for truth. There was a very interesting comment made yesterday. They said that what truth is one, but our interpretations are different, and I think there is really much wisdom in that. So we're supposed to have a fifth speaker. We haven't received the PowerPoint. We haven't had any information from them. Is that fifth presenter here or not? Okay, it appears no, they're not here. In terms of time, I think we are probably, it's 3 minutes past 1. Okay, let's take another question, and yeah. Any burning issues? Any suggestions for future work in this area? And then we'll wrap up.
Hello. Yeah. A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries. And sir, I would like to ask that these social media platforms, they have become a need today. Like for example, LinkedIn, that's used for networking. And you have to put all your achievements and all, you have to put them over there, and even you are exposing yourself, your credentials you are exposing. And similarly Facebook and all. And then we are expected to take precautions on our side. Like we have to comply to their terms and conditions, and then we are expected we have to behave safely or something. And there on social network we have to put something, or else it's not social network at all then. So the question is that why can't the government put some regulations on these kinds of social media platforms, so that the data privacy can be taken care of? And you cannot expect 1.25 billion or like the whole population of a single country like India to comply or to take precautions for like data privacy and to protect themselves. It will be better if you can have these private giants to comply to government regulations, and so then we can better ensure this kind of privacy. Thank you.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The question is, social media is an integral part of our lives, but the fact is, when it comes to regulation, by and large we find that the adequate frameworks are missing. The government has been by and large in India saying social media is free, we are not going to interfere, and that's so because the Indian Constitution guarantees the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression. However, the Information Technology Act 2000, after its amendments, being the Indian cyber law, recognizes these social media players as intermediaries. Now, these players are mandated to exercise due diligence while they discharge their obligations under the law, under Section 79 of the Information Technology Act. Some parameters of due diligence were defined by the government in 2011 by virtue of the Information Technology Rules 2011, but those were 2011. Today in 2017, the scenario is dramatically different. So I think the government needs to utilize the secondary legislation power that's been given to them under Section 87 of the IT Act and come up with specific parameters making these guys responsible. Typically what's happening is a large number of these social media players are located outside India. You want them to delete some stuff, they will say, sorry, I'm a company located outside your country, I'm governed by my country's laws, get me my country's court order. Now I think that argument is something that needs to be rejected. If you are targeting India and you are doing your business and getting your big bucks in India, your activities are available on computer systems located physically within the territorial boundaries of India. There's no reason why you should not be amenable to that law. This is what the argument that has been upheld in China, in France, in Germany. I see no reason why that argument should not be upheld. But unfortunately, we haven't yet seen a judicial pronouncement to that effect. But there's an immense requirement that the government needs to come up with secondary legislation in the form of rules and regulations mandating these service providers not to act as mere smute spectators. It's their responsibility. Something happens, they need to do it. I think I've been talking that ultimately, when there are so many people who are facing the brunt of this digital defamation and digital nuisance, we require an ombudsman within these guys, so that any complaint needs to go to a single point of contact, and that concerned point of contact will then mandate the service provider to remove the content. The Indian law does provide about these social media services companies having grievance officers, but unfortunately, practically speaking, the experiment of a grievance officer has not worked. So all onus is on the government. Good news is the government has already announced that it will be amending the Information Technology Act. So hopefully we should see some new provisions in this regard so as to effectively provide more legal standing and law and order to this lawless environment that we are continuously seeing on social media.
Sir, since this being an anthropological issue, the problems are universal, we can say. And it's not limited to a country. Like privacy is something a person in India or in France or wherever, it's the same. So why can't we have universal rules so that you don't have this issue of talking to that country's legislation and the judiciaries?
That's wonderful, and that's what we've been talking. But that's utopia. That doesn't happen in the real world. Countries do not want a national and international legal regime because then they would be bound to that particular effect. So for example, in the last 24 hours, we've now come to know that your and my WhatsApp messages are being read. And we thought we were secure. And with end-to-end encryption, we had this double sense of overconfidence. That's been completely shattered. But I think clearly there are competing interests from sovereignty, from the perspective of interception, monitoring, and also from the perspective of balancing civil liberties and privacy as a whole. It will take quite some time for us to really get one international law, but I think each country is now increasingly saying, my national cyber law shall govern activities pertaining to cyberspace. So unfortunately, countries have started building their own artificial boundaries within this boundaryless medium that we created known as cyberspace. And that's going to lead to defragmentation of the internet. Already people are having concerns that it could even lead to balkanization of the internet. And with Russia leading way, with coming up with a new law saying, if you are doing business with Russians in Russia, you have to ensure that the data of Russians must be physically located in Russia. Now that's a different ballgame altogether. So we are now beginning to see various competing interests pulling from all directions. We'll have to wait and watch how the international jurisprudence involves in this regard.
So just one last question, if you may allow, that is related to the question asked by Mr. Paul Hector regarding bridging the digital India with the anthropological issues which were brought up by Abhipsha Pal. Thing is that there is an issue that the social media today, it tunes the mindset of the nation. Like the content which is coming up, it trains people's mind, and that changes the culture. So is it, and that also leads to terrorism and all the sadism which is widespread today. So the question is, can we somehow control that? Can we have some rules for that? Thank you.
So I have to wrap up the session now, but just a very quick reply. Society is perhaps one of the biggest platforms for innovation. No society, no culture is static. It changes. As the changes occur, our values change, the objectives, the things that we prioritize change. So I think that's pretty much the context, which makes it important for us to keep having these ongoing debates. I think today's discussion has been extremely rich. We've touched on just a few of the issues, and we've seen the vast complexity. And so I'd like to thank very much the panelists, the authors, first of all, for provoking many of these discussions, the debate. And of course, our panel here for sharing different perspectives, experiences on this issue. And to the audience, it would not have been possible without you. Thank you for your questions. We still have almost half, maybe a quarter of the room still full. We had a full house earlier. We're way past the time, and I really congratulate you for what you've put into this work, the interest that you've shown in this. And so, of course, we will need to come back and keep addressing this. And I hope we can receive some contributions from you about those questions which we were not able to take. We'd be very happy to receive them.